Hello, everyone, and welcome back to round 16 of the 2022 Scrabble Players Championship. I'm Morris Greenberg, and I'm here with Jared Capel.
It is nice to be back, and for game two of today, we have Robin Pollock Daniel and Jeremy Hall. And it's
Yeah,
nice to see Robin here, her being from Toronto, and I've lived in Toronto my whole life, and Morris is a recent transplant to Toronto, so we're definitely bringing you a lot of Canadian action here in the North American Scrabble Players Championship, presented by Scrabble Go.
yeah, thank you. I forgot to give the plug before for Scrabble Go. Yeah, Scrabble Go is sponsoring this stream. I'm actually going to put a little link in the chat of all the thank yous. So uh, you can read all about Scrabble Go there. But yeah, Robin, Toronto player, as I said earlier, Americans, y'all have to step up. Canadians are dominating this tournament. Robin was first place going into today. She lost her first game, but still, Americans, Canadians have thrown down the gauntlet. You have to pick it up.
And Robin, in particular, played really well on stream. She is known for having perfect word knowledge, or perfect maybe is a touch strong, but near perfect. And she used that to her advantage, getting some phonies by people who didn't think that she was the type of player to phony and deferred to her reputation for this great word knowledge. Against one of the very favorites in the tournament, Jackson Smiley, also previously from Toronto, now in Montreal, she played the word declare, which is not good. And it makes sense as a word, and it's tough to know. We had spoke about how those ER endings can be difficult to know if they're good or not. And that really led to a big victory over Jackson.
Yeah, and I think that really does speak to Robin's sureness of herself. I know when I play players above a certain rating, historically I've become more cautious, right?
Right.
Jackson is a nearly 2100 rated player, one of the top five or so rated players in North America. And often that leads to more caution by a player. But Robin felt like she had the advantage still, which is super cool.
Yeah, and Jackson, I've seen him go through some of those quizzes on Aerolith, and he gets 100% with maybe one error, but it's a lot easier to unscramble words in a program like that instead of over board one in a national tournament like this. And we're
Yeah,
going to look now to Robin's first rack, as she'll be going first here, and she's drawn ADORTTU. What would you be thinking here, Morris?
Yeah, so the play that jumps out to me immediately is Doubt, DOUT, just because ART is such a synergistic leave of three tiles. The D and the U, and the second T especially, slow down the rest of these tiles a bit. But you're in a situation where you don't have high scoring point tiles, you're close ish to bingos, but not quite there. So you just want to get rid of the few that are slowing you down, I think.
And she did have doubt set up on her rack at one point. We'll see if she comes back to it. I agree with you. That is what I would be thinking to play.
Yeah, and I see the chat was checking synergistic. It is a real word. Don't
Yeah.
worry, folks. I'm not making that up.
Okay, interesting. She doesn't have an S, but look where she plays it.
Yeah, so what Jared is referring to is doubts can take an S at the end, and that would the S lane that would create would be on double word scores instead of triple letter scores, which usually score more points overall. I think her reasoning probably is the U versus the O above and below the double letter scores, those light blue squares. Uh, there are fewer words, two letter words with a U than an O. So I think she maybe was going for defense from that perspective instead of from the S's perspective.
Perhaps, but yesterday in one of her games, we saw her play the word wiener one square over to the right from where we'd expect it to. So maybe she just is missing where she's placing these tiles down.
Yeah, or maybe it's like the new Moneyball is to always make plays that end in column J or
Yeah,
two columns away from the star.
it's good to keep your opponents on edge. Maybe she wanted Jeremy to think that she had an S, and in fact she doesn't. Although when we look at Jeremy's rack, he does have the first S of the game. There's no bingos available, and we can see that because of the computer program we have in the background here. So he's going to take some time to look for them, though, because he's got a very promising rack. He has 3 vowels, 4 consonants, exactly the ratio you want to see. He has no duplicates, which we also like. He has an S, all 1 point tiles, all tiles that look like a bingo. He might think of non-words like outleans or toluanes, things that sound like words but aren't quite. Oh, and he's putting down toluanes.
Yeah, wow. What a development. And we'll see if Robin challenges here. I mean, we saw her be okay with playing phonies. Was that because she was just hazy on her words, or was she that sure of
Well, she definitely
things?
has him on hold, and she is a great wordsmith, so I would be very surprised to see this stay on the board.
Yes.
Looks like Jeremy's drawing provisional tiles at least. If she has him on hold after 15 seconds, he's allowed to take new tiles. It doesn't necessarily mean the play's been accepted, however.
Yeah, so
And
we'll so she accepted, so that will be a nice score. We'll enter that in now.
so Robin getting a taste of her own medicine. She had got some phonies by 2 Canadians, Jackson and Michael, earlier in this event, and now Jeremy, after Morris pleaded for the American players to step up, he's going to get a phony by one of the very top wordsmiths in the entire world. And Robin is looking at a nice balanced rack. She also has the 3 vowels and 4 consonants, but the B and the P together make it a lot harder to find bingos. Not exactly the letter combo or synergy that we would like to see. What she's going to want to do is see if she can get the B or the P to one of those double letter scores and then also go through uh, the triple word score.
Yeah, yeah, it's a slight. I feel like her racks, and I guess Jeremy's rack too, if he doesn't play a phony, are all slightly awkward. They seem almost like the good stuff, but just far enough away that it doesn't make for an obvious play.
I think pro bits would be an option here.
Oh, very nice find.
Yeah, but it does break up this nice rack, but I don't think she'd have a problem with that. She's down 52. It would score 42, so it would pretty much take out most of the deficit. And she
Yeah,
is finding it. No surprise there.
yeah, and so it is interesting that she just released Tall Wings that quickly. We saw yesterday on stream Jackson Smiley, who, when he holds, he basically plans out what his response play would be because
Right.
he sees as a cost benefit analysis of, okay, how sure am I if this is good or not? And what is the situational advantage or disadvantage from this word being on the board? And I think if you did that here, Robin would say, I am not sure enough of Toluane's, and Probit scores enough back. And Toluane's is a really low scoring bingo. It only scored 62 points. That you're not going to take that risk if
Right.
you
And
see Probits. But
and if
she
she
didn't
didn't
do that step,
challenge,
right? Yeah.
not only is she getting hit with 62 points, but there's that S in that lane that then Jeremy was going to get another crack at before she was. So it makes it very difficult to challenge. The other thing is, players who don't study words might not know, is that toluene is a word, Toluene. So when words sound similar, it can lead to a lot of confusion. It's a lot easier to know what is a word than to know what isn't a word. And that's because people will study words and they'll become familiar, but what isn't a word could be literally any string of letters. And especially when they sound similar, it leads to a lot of confusion, even from someone like Robin, who's been studying quite regularly for quite some time.
Yeah, and shout out to the chat. I'm a PhD stat student, so I see the discussion of why is probit valid in Scrabble and not logit. I totally agree. Dictionary committee, add logit to the Scrabble dictionary. They both should be words. Uh, so
And I
Jeremy
see
looks
some
like
references to Nepo. I assume that's chess references here. Morris and I were both talking about how we play chess. There's a lot of overlaps between chess and Scrabble, especially since the pandemic when Twitch streaming became a lot more popular. So if you're here from the chess world, we definitely welcome you. As Jeremy is going to play Ionize, which takes a front hook of an L, Lionize, and back hooks of DRS. So there's a lot that Robin can do in response. She can also play through that Z. You see it slotted one square beneath the multiplier double word score.
Yeah, I think ionize seems pretty standard there. There are some front extensions. I know deionize is a word, for instance,
Hmm.
but the back hooks of ionizer, ionized, ionizes, I think will be really key. Just because any hook with that, you'll add 15 points right away to your score, and it will be in a right if you can get a word something like wordy making ionized, that's going to be a ton of points. So my guess is that will be a key spot. And Robin makes a nice play of Azo. She had 5 vowels there. She gets rid of 2 of them and still scores 24. I think she's hitting all the right notes with that
Yeah,
play.
and that's a nice leave, ACEET. That'll go nicely with the R of probits and the D of doubt. So when you're talking about a leave, it's not just the tiles you're leaving, but also how well they play with the tiles that are already on the board.
Yeah, and so Jeremy does have 2 different bingos here available to him as 8-letter words. And one of them is Aigrett, Aigrett. And it looks like that would look obstructed, but because of the A and the O that Robin placed. But if Jeremy already saw that, he will not be discouraged from seeing it. He would register that at is still a word, that play wouldn't be blocked. So, but it looks like he might not be seeing either that or a glitter through the L.
Yeah, they are high probability bingos, but they're not the easiest to see, especially on this board. A glitter barely fits with no extra tiles to play, and you noted how Agrat is partially obstructed. He'd have to also form AT. So you do want to see him find it. He knows that it's a promising rack, so we expect him to take some time here. The other thing is, if he doesn't play one of the bingos, his other options uh, aren't going to do much unless he plays it with Ionizer. So if he doesn't bingo, that would be my hunch as to what we'll see. But it would break up this very promising rack.
Yeah, well, one thing to monitor is Robin has accumulate through the L as well.
I
Uh,
also saw ecaudate. I think that's something to do
nice.
with having a tail, because like the caudal. I'm not gonna try to flex my science knowledge too much because I don't have that much of it, but I believe that has something to do with having a tail.
Yeah, so ecaudate and accumulate would both be blocked by a glitter specifically. Uh, so this will actually be a nice. This will be a relief to Robin if she doesn't even see ecaudate. Oh no, accumulate is still
Aculiate just
blocked.
got blocked,
So
but I'm very confident Robin's gonna find ecaudate here. And it's a good word because I'm pretty sure it doesn't take the hooks. I'm just gonna check that.
yeah, I think caudate is a word, right? And
Yeah, and then you can put the front hooks of A and E in the back of DNS to caudate, but E caudate has no hooks.
yeah, yeah.
Like so, it's not having a tail. The E is like I believe a Latin root, like you'll see in a lot of words that means that sort of negates. I shouldn't be trying to talk about Latin because I don't really know it, and Robin hasn't found it yet. So I'm not sure if this is the pressure of playing on board one. Um, it doesn't mean she won't find it.
Yeah, if she doesn't find it, that changes a lot. I mean, Gert, if you're not going to find a bingo there, I think Jeremy showed a lot of situational awareness by playing Gert. It really doesn't open too much when a lot of things could have in that situation.
Right.
And Robin just plays EAU, and man,
That's a
that's
big point sacrifice.
yeah,
53 points fewer. So That does hurt her winning chances for sure, especially as Jeremy is looking to play non-tax. Um,
Well, he's missing, I think, the double double through the U there
oh, to
of to
know, the
know to
French
know.
word. Wow, that would have been beautiful. He was
Yeah.
smart not to play non-taxed, as some players might have tried to the D in doubt. But non-tax is it a noun or is it an adjective? I think it's an adjective. No, it's probably a noun.
I think it's a noun. I
It's
could
a
be
noun,
wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but we definitely could have seen players tried non-taxed, because untaxed would for sure be a word. So that's
Yeah.
a big scoring by Jeremy, as he's over double Robin's score early in this game.
Yeah, so even though he's missed bingos on two consecutive turns, he's still scoring well. And keep in mind, he found a bingo that Quackle wouldn't have. Granted, it was phony,
Right.
but yeah, you
It
could
still
criticize
counts. If
him.
it doesn't get challenged, it's still a bingo.
Yeah, so you could
And
criticize, but
right.
he still made it up.
And Robin has a bingo here. And she already has it set up on her rack. So we're going to see it come down.
Yeah, would you play KCH or KCAted?
Yeah, it's definitely a consideration. I think KC8's going to score two more, so I would lean in that direction. But you have to remember her big deficit. Even after the bingo, she's going to be down about 30 and a turn. Um, but KC8 forks the board because above ED, you're going to be able to go to the right. And the C is going to be in the triple lane no matter where you play it. So I would play KC8 and ED.
Yeah,
Probably
so
below, yeah.
so Robin is playing
Below is more defensive.
KC8 and DE. It's more defensive from the perspective of like 4 or 5 letter word type plays,
Yeah,
but it actually allows for bingos ending in an S. If she placed it
that's
above
true.
and made
Yeah.
ED, uh, the S would be in the seventh row, so you could only put
Oh,
6 letters above it.
but look at that. It still allows for freckles to fit, and Jeremy has no problem finding that common word, and his lead is going to continue to grow. That is 108 points. Having the F,
Yeah.
C, and K all tripled, and then the 50-point bonus. So as Morris updates the score here, we're going to see it at 283 to 151. That is quite the lead, but unlike in the last game, there are lanes available, so it's definitely not over yet. But Robin won't be happy with her VVWY draw. When you're looking to play a bingo, you can maybe handle one of those clunky tiles, but having four of them is not going to work out well for her.
Yeah, wavy is the play you obviously look for here to try to get rid of 3 of those 4 at least. And it does play very nicely beneath the A, T, and E in KC8,
Yeah,
making A, TA, and Dev. So if she sees it, I expect that to be a pretty quick
or maybe
play.
she'll try a phony and play DOUTY.
Oh, Dowdy. Right, Dowdier is
Nope.
that? No, okay.
So I think that would be a tough phony, because if someone played Doughty against you, you would then think about Doughtier, and because that would be so high probability, Jeremy would be pretty likely to know it's not good. But we had Morris here thinking about it, so it's possible it could get by an expert level player.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I feel like I have not been up on my studying in the past.
So
We'll say
modest, our Mr.
we'll,
Greenberg here.
we'll say month, but by month, change that to year, change that to 2 years, fill in the blank, however you
And
want.
speaking of blanks, that will make for a nice segue, as I'm looking over to Jeremy's rack, and he has drawn a blank to go along with Q and J, DIPT. So he's not going to bingo on his next turn. Those letters don't go together nicely, but he is poised to keep control of his leave. And the
Yeah,
J goes nicely above the O in probits if he wanted to just drop for one tile. But first it's Robin's turn, as she picks up Wavy, as we expected.
yeah. I'm wondering if he's going to play Coddy and GI there. He has it set up on his rack, Coddy, and it does score so much and close down that part of the board, you can't put that many things in front of the Q. You need to
Yeah.
use at least 2 letters. It'd be a great situational awareness
By
from
my
him.
math, it scores 42. So it would put him ahead about 140, which would feel pretty nice. That's about a 2 bingo lead. But JPT is not ideal. We'll definitely think about it. Like I said, he could also drop the J and hope to get maybe the A to pair with Cotty so he doesn't have to burn the blank. At
Yeah,
some point, he's going to want to take out the nice bingo lanes of the S and the E and caseate, although I don't think he has the tiles to do it this turn. And then another lane he wants to think about is hooking doubt with the S. That is going to be very difficult to block, especially unless you have an S.
yeah.
So,
So, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt. Keep
I
going.
am finished my thought. I want to hear what you have to think.
Well, I think QIS might be the move then if you want to take out the S and E and KC8. Just
Oh, yeah, of
plop,
course.
plop that down. Yeah, if that's the lane you're most concerned about, it scores 22, does enough. Hope to draw a vowel, but even if
And
not,
it's
you
so
have the
nice
J
to get rid of
playing.
the Q on this turn. So
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah, and I think that's what he has set up now. I mean, Cody would be interesting here too. I think that does have some merit. Keep in mind there are only 2 A's left in the game. So many A's and O's have been played. There are 2 of each left. The bag vowel wise is much more E and I heavy. So, like holding out for the A in hopes
Yeah,
of having Cody
it's
without the
crazy that
blink is
seven
hard.
A's have been played. Shows you how randomness doesn't always work how the human mind thinks. Um, we would think that all the vowels would sort of deplete at a similar rate, but in some games you'll see all the A's go early. Some games you might see all the E's go early. And that QI's S play that came down, cheese, which is probably the most common word played in Scrabble because it gets rid of that difficult Q. It blocks the S of KC8, it blocks the E of KC8, and it blocks the F of freckles. So that is a lot to accomplish when you already have a 100-point lead.
And Robin responds right away with Vanine. Very nice play, and it opens the board back up for her a bit, which she desperately needs now that she was down over 100 after QIS. I mean, she can't really tell that Jared, or not Jared, Jeremy, different J, great player names, has the blank, but it's what she has to do there.
Absolutely, and the V makes it difficult to overlap, which means that it's a bit more likely to stay open. Um, Jeremy did draw some vowels, which was his goal after playing QI, so he drew IO, and now his rack is looking much more promising. He has both the hooks to the G of Gert, being the O and the I, which also helps him. So what would you be looking to play here?
Yeah, well, one thing to keep in mind, in general, there are a lot of constants, I think, this bag. Given that there, from Jeremy's perspective, there are 2 A's, 4 E's, 2 I's, an O, and a U left in the bag. Uh, I would maybe just plop down the J, as Jared was saying previously, for Joe right above the O and pro bits, and keeping both of my vowels because, yeah, it scores a good amount. He'll be up by over 100 still. The key I and O vowels are really good on this board, with the G in Gert only taking GI and GO as 2 letter words. Uh, I think, yeah, you want to preserve your vowels here, given that there aren't that many, and those ones specifically are good. So just play Joe.
And when you're looking to play off one tile, what you want to do is, oh, sorry, before I make this commentary, perhaps there was an overdraw. You see the guy with the referee jersey in the background, and Robin's now mixing her tiles. What I think happened is she probably drew one tile too many, which means Jeremy's going to be able to flip 3 tiles probably and decide which one to put back in the bag, and Robin will collect the other ones for her overdraw.
Yeah, that's
And
always a fun decision point. But
yeah,
I think you were talking about when you play off one tile, what do you look to do?
right. So what he wants to know is if he leaves DIOPT blank, will he be able to draw one tile that will lead to a bingo? And it's definitely possible on this board. If he were to draw an E, for example, he could play a word like podites, Podites. And there's definitely other opportunities. So instead, he's going to play off a second consonant. Probably, I'm not sure I agree with that. It doesn't really obstruct the board too much. I guess takes out the O in the center, but that's not a huge lane. But
Yeah,
it gives him one more tile to draw, and he drew two vowels. So that's a bit of the risk there. He was already sitting on a pretty promising rack, and by drawing two, it gave him more opportunity to get into trouble. You were saying how there were a few vowels in the bag, and yet he managed to draw two of them. So again, randomness doesn't always work the way that our human minds like to think.
yeah, or as I think a lot of Scrabble players like to say, variance
Right.
is the. It's almost become a meme at this point. I feel like we should get some variance memes going on in the chat.
And meanwhile, Robin drew the other blank, and to go with that, she had some clunky tiles, which are the high scoring tiles that don't lead to a lot of bingos. When you have the blank and the deficit, you're definitely looking at bingo. So she makes a beautiful insertion play of mu, just dropping the M and the W in this little 3x3 square in the bottom right of the board, also forming ami, which is a French word meaning friend, and out, a later addition to the dictionary, I believe.
Yeah, and Ami does take some back hooks, so even though it does right, like the F can no longer go there, for instance, but Ami takes a back A and a back E. Or no, maybe does it take an A? I'm rusty on some of these stuff. Definitely an E.
It takes an
Uh,
A, Amia,
okay.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And,
So and
and speaking of the A, it comes down. So podia, being the plural of podium, comes down for a nice score. And when you're ahead, if you can keep scoring 30 plus points a turn, you're going to be in a great position. And he'll score 37 here. So Jeremy, an expert player out of the New York area, um, has taken a very commanding 130-point lead.
and we'll see if chat can find the one crazy bingo they have already. Orangium
And
for
yeah, I
Robin.
saw that one too. And the nice thing about that one is it's going across two double word scores. We call that a double double. Here in Canada, a double double is a coffee at Tim Hortons with cream and sugar. But in Scrabble, it's a bingo, or not necessarily a bingo, but a play that goes across two double word scores. And so the play is times four. So she'll get all the points on the rack if she finds it, times four, and then plus 50 for the bingo. For 102 points is available if she can find it.
Yeah, and a few days ago, Matt Canick on stream mentioned a summer shandy, and
Yeah.
someone sent him some summer shandies via DoorDash. Jared has now mentioned a double double. Chat, if you know where Jared lives, send him some double doubles, or maybe just one.
Just one, yeah.
Just one.
Not too much caffeine, although the stream is pretty early in the morning. And look at that. She's getting very close. No. One thing to mention, we talk about how Robin's such a great word finder. Fatigue is a big thing in these tournaments. It's a 5-day thing. It feels like an exam the entire time. I noticed it myself in this recent World Cup. It was my first 5-day tournament, and by day 3, the fatigue really started to set in. So we'll see if she can find this very key play. This is the play she really needs to find to give herself any chance in this game, especially when we look to Jeremy's rack and see that he has really drawn nicely to his leave.
Yeah, and so Orangium will block his play of bitters and doubts. The other thing could be, given that it would block Jeremy's, I think, only bingos, uh, he might challenge Orangium.
He
And,
could, yeah.
and so it feels like if she finds it, it could be, even though she's down by 129 points, it will completely change the game, not only because it's 102 points, but it blocks a bingo, and that could motivate
But
Jeremy to challenge.
Aringium, I'm almost positive, takes the S, so he would still be able to play words like braised,
Ah, nice.
or anything like that. So, but he might not know it takes the S. He might not know it's a word at all. When you have a bingo with letters like the Y, the M, and the G, it becomes a lower probability bingo as we think about it. the way these top players study is they start with the bingos that are most likely to come up. So those are with all the 1 point tiles because there's the most of them in the game. So a bingo like retinas, as the Scrabble community often points to as one of the first one, Retinas. There's a lot of each of those tiles in the bag, and with no duplication, that's the sort of bingo that's going to come up over and over and over again. Whereas a word like eryngium, which let's get a definition in the chat if we can. Is it a flower, perhaps? I always like to think these words are flowers, but I'm probably wrong. Oh, it is a plant. There you go. A plant of the parsley family. And we're seeing Bax West, who I met at the World Cup in Chicago, say that this is why he likes Double Challenge. It adds a lot to the game.
And it looks like she's just going to play Yum, unfortunately. I mean, Robin is one of the few players who I would say could have found Aryntium. Cesar point down the chat, Aerolith, the popular study program, she is one of the best at blank bingo quizzes, which is basically these sorts of situations. You get 6 or 7 tiles plus a blank, and you have to unscramble, and she is one of the best at that. So but it goes to show you, Origin is that tough a find that one of the best people in the world at this couldn't see it.
Yeah, she's missed a few bingos this game, so when she looks over her plays later, she's probably not going to be too happy. But it's a long tournament, and there's still a lot of Scrabble to be played. As Jeremy now is going to have his choice of bingos here. You mentioned bitters. He could play binders, rebinds. He's first going to look from the E in Vanin or Vanin. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. See if he can make a double-double as we like.
Yeah, but any bingo he picks here, he's basically locked up the game at this point. He's already up over 100, adding 70 plus.
And there's only 19 unseen tiles, so after his bingo, there would only be 12 unseen tiles. And what you try and do to figure out winning percentages, he would need two bingos to. She would need two bingos to get back in the game, probably even 3 at this point. Okay, so he's going to take out the E and play debriefs, maybe debrides. Okay, that will do it. Like Morris said, it didn't really matter which bingo he chose, except for perhaps some spread points. Go ahead.
Which he needed. I think he had a negative spread before, or close to it. So he will definitely benefit from spread for this game.
I think all players will benefit from spread. What happens in these tournaments is it becomes a bit of a how much brain power do I want to use in a game that's already decided to get those key spread points. But at the same time, you're trying to preserve brain power for the fatigue that sets in these longer tournaments. I finished 5th in the recent World Cup, but 4 of us from 2nd to 5th place were all at 20 wins, and it was the spread points that had me at the bottom. So I definitely understand the value of missing out on some of those key spread points.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a bit too sacrificing with spread. I once cashed the Nationals with a negative spread.
Wow,
I
basically unheard of.
19-12 with like negative 100 spread, something like that. So it's I think, but like a lot of that was just I'm gonna win anyways, and I'm not sure of this word, so I'm gonna challenge. And
I've definitely been guilty of that myself, and I do like to preserve mental energy. It's a marathon more than a sprint. Robin doesn't quite have a bingo here. She could play hog. She could play Hong. She could play hog with 2 Gs. She could play hog with 1 G and set up the second G, although that wouldn't be much of a setup as it's not really going anywhere.
Well, she could.
With the Y obstructing the bingo lane, it would open.
Yeah, so Jared is talking about putting the H underneath the S in Debrides to make SH and going horizontally. She could also play hog above the E and the S in Debrides if she wanted to set up the G.
Hog, that's interesting.
Hog can be spelled with 1 G or 2 Gs in Scrabble. And so, she could play HOG to set up the second G.
And that would be very difficult to block, especially knowing there's only one A left, as we said, and the A is the only letter that can go before the G. We were saying earlier how the A's all got played early, and so now late in the game we only see one left. It does happen to be on Jeremy's rack, but Robin doesn't know that for sure. Um, from Robin's perspective, there's 12 unseen tiles, so 7 of them are on Jeremy's rack. We see that they're HALF as well as ICR. Um, and then there's also a D, 3 E's, and another L.
Yeah, and so she's going to play Honk, which will leave one in the bag, given that there were five in the bag previously. I think, yeah, I think it's a fine play. At this point, you're already losing, and you're just hoping for the best in some ways. I think
I
in a
think perhaps,
marathon, you're
yeah.
saving some of your energy at this point.
Also, I think perhaps the N is better to bingo through than the G. So
Yeah.
by putting that N in the bingo lane, she's hoping to maybe get a late bingo with her blank. So that makes some sense to me. And also, she formed sh as a word, sh, and I'm sure people can figure out you can put an A before it to form ash. So Jeremy happens to have it, but with her blank, she knew that she could have also formed ash there, and she still could if it stays open.
Yeah, and
Jeremy
so
has a C here. He's going to probably want to play the C to not get stuck with it later. We were talking about getting stuck with tiles. The C and the V both don't take any two-letter words, so those are the sort of tiles people are often scared of getting stuck with late in the game, as well as the very clunky Q.
yeah, so Flinch or Finch could come down. Finch is probably the most defensive option here, and it scores a bunch.
Finch takes out basically any lane that I can see. And I think if he sees it, he should be playing it right away. You get the H on the multiplier. You're leaving LAR, which drawing, does that say 8 unseen tiles? So there's only one in the
One in the
bag.
bag.
And so LAR plus pretty much anything he draws will give him a very easy route to going out.
Yeah, so we know the D is in the bag. Robin drew three E's after that last play.
She
And
definitely wasn't expecting that. Looking at the pool, she probably thought she was going to draw a touch better than that. But at the same time, she knows this one is well over. So in game one, we had a game that went right down to the wire. In this one, it was quite close until Jeremy really broke it open with that Freckles play for a huge bingo, and then he drew the first blank and got down to breeds.
yeah, and even still, I mean, if Robin finds Orangium there, that
Yeah,
could have blown open the game too. And that just goes to show you, I mean, even if you're down, you never want to give up in Scrabble. I mean, maybe at this point you are if you're Robin, because
well, at this point, it's
it
basically a mathematical certainty that she's lost. But earlier in the game, it definitely wasn't. And I don't think she gave up by any point. I think she spent quite a lot of time looking for her bingo. Unfortunately, as sometimes happens, she wasn't able to find it. Um, this game started with a phony bingo, starting being on turn 2, I believe, of Toluane's, and that really swung everything. So she held it. She was a bit iffy on it. This game could have gone very differently on quite a few turns. If Jeremy had also, he also had a miss of to know, Tonneneaux, and that is a French word, but it has made the way into our dictionary, and so it's acceptable. And I bet it's a word that both Jeremy and Robin would have known. So there were a lot of chances for 100+ point bingos here, which you don't see too often. And one of them came down in the case of Freckles.
yeah, no, there were a lot of bingo misses here this game, and I think, as Jared was saying, it's partially just that at this point in the tournament, your brain does start to get hazier, and like if this were game one, I think a few more of those bingos would come down, or maybe not game one. Let's say game two, where you shake off your nerves.
Yeah, game one's the hardest game. Everyone walks in all nervous, and it's very easy to play poorly in a game one.
So we'll say game two instead of game 16. Uh, yeah, you really need to be sharp. Like I think in some ways, if you're an expert in prepping for nationals or an event like this, I think it is really valuable to have some sort of workout or mind space routine as you get closer and closer to the tournament, right? Like, make sure you're actually in good shape such that you'll have stamina for 31 games.
Definitely. And in the chat, we see Wanderer15 saying that's why he never misses bingos, except for Highveld. And that came up in an article written by Stefan Fatsis. He recounted the story. So look for that article on slate.com. And while we have a chance, let's shout out our friend Will, um, who both Morris and I think has a great chance to win this tournament.
I think he has an okay chance. No,
Okay.
he's probably laughing right now. But yeah, Will is someone who definitely does his gym routine. I know he likes to do his weighted squats. So get yoked, everyone.
And as I
It's
told Will at that tournament, there was a big sign on the front door at the World Cup saying that there was no guns allowed in the tournament. And yet he had the gall to walk into that room with his very jacked arms. So he was lucky not to have been kicked out. And Will finished in third place, a very successful tournament in a extremely difficult field.
Yeah, and there is a question by G.I. Joel, who is Il Wanderson? We want to know this stuff too.
Um,
I
and going back to the game, because it is still going, Robin looks like she wants to play on top of Ash, forming Gash, L-I and E-L, so she'll probably play Glee. One thing she'll be considering here is where can Jeremy put some of those higher scoring tiles to see if maybe she wants to block that spot before playing a word like Glee.
Yeah, and it will allow her to hit 300 points, which is something you always want. It's a moral victory when you're losing by over 150 to at least hit 300. It's discouraging if in games where I haven't, for sure.
Okay, so Glee does come down. We'll probably see Jeremy play something like duh through the U in the phony Toluanes.
Yeah, I think Chid is a bit better
Oh,
through the
is Chid
I.
available? Oh, yeah.
I and Debreeds, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to find plays on this small screen, so forgive me when I miss. But Jeremy certainly will not. Chid
Yeah.
being like to chide, I believe that's a past tense form.
Oh, that's good to know. I so wouldn't take an S then. I've forgotten that.
Noah is not letting me make excuses, so at least I knew that Chid was the past tense, so maybe that gives me a bit more respect back. I can't use the excuse of being rusty like you, having just played a 5-day tournament, so I should be a bit sharper than I've been. I'll use the it's early in the morning excuse, because, you know, I enjoy a good excuse as much as anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, so Robin looks like she's now figuring out where to put her last few tiles, but yeah, Orangium was the tough word here that if you don't see it, it swings the game.
You gotta know those plants in the parsley family. That's what I always say.
Yeah, rolls off the tongue, right?
Yeah. Again, if you're newer to Scrabble, or if you're just watching, never really played the game, don't worry about words like that. We're watching the best of the best. There are other streams that are focused on maybe a bit more lower level of play. This is the very top, and that's why we're being a touch critical here, because when players are playing at such a high level in such an important tournament with so much money on the line, um, they really have to hit even these really obscure words if they want to be the one to come out on top.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, like Nigel Richards, for instance, that's one of the things people know about him that he finds these crazy words. Like Nigel would find Orangium. Um, and there are a few others I think Will might. Robin, I would have put in that camp of being like a 50-50 shot to find something like that. And it just shows you how tough this tournament is.
Especially playing on stream. It's a lot easier sitting here from our perspective, so um, definitely point that out. She's
Yeah.
going to take her time. She has 2 minutes left. Every bread point counts, and so why not make sure she finds the best play? In this case, she has three different words she could form for 13 points, depending on what she wants to make the blank as, and that would be next to yum. So she could play purr, forming pup, emo. Uh, that would be nice. She's circling the blank, so she's decided what she's going to make her play. Hopefully, she ends the game on a high note, finding this 13-point play. And she does. So it doesn't matter which of the three, or the four, excuse me, letters she could have made it as. The blank could be a Y, an S, a P, or an H.
Yeah,
Those
the
are all
Y
valid
was.
three-letter words in both directions. And the game will end with the final score of 472 to 317. So a very big victory for Jeremy Hall on stream.
It's good I didn't play Casey.
Yeah, so that will move Jeremy up to the double-digit column in the wins. Robin has lost her first two this morning, but don't count her out. Although I will
Definitely
give.
not. And for Jeremy, this might be his first time playing on stream, and we didn't see any nerves whatsoever. And it looks like they're post-morteming, as we call it, where they look at the different plays. I wonder if they figured out by now that Talyuane's not a word. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
You see Lisa Kessler next to Jeremy, another at least former resident of Toronto. And she's doing the annotation, so she's writing down the racks and entering them, and you can find that all online.
Yeah, I'll throw a link to the standings page, which has also the games, all sorts of stuff of coverage of this tournament. And shout out not just to Lisa, but all of the annotators and people working the tournament. I know Kieran O'Connor is the division leader of Division One, the Collins divisions, which that's what we've been seeing most of, and the tournament's been running really smoothly from my understanding. So shout out to all the volunteers and workers at this tournament. Thank you for doing such a great job, and for giving 300 people lots of fun in the tournament and so many more watching from afar.
Absolutely, and
Ability.
thank you to the people running this stream, including Christian K on the technical side and Josh Greenway overseeing a lot of this, along with John Chu and others. And to look at the standings right now, Joey Krafchick has a game lead over three players, two of whom we've seen this morning, being Clay Daniel and Robin Pollock Daniel. That Daniel last name is clearly a good indicator of Scrabble talent, and Ori Swift will be the other 11 and 5 person at the moment. And then there are a whole lot of people at 10 and 6, including some of the tournament favorites like Will Anderson and Josh Sokol and Joe Edley, who we saw this morning.
Yeah, so I think we'll see Joey Krafchick coming up, but we are going to take a short break before that. Stay tuned.